speakers at in-person council meetings. If you would like to be called on during the meeting to provide public input, please insert again your name into the chat and your address. And you will be called on during the relevant time for public input. You will then be given 3 minutes to speak. Please be sure to unmute yourself prior to giving your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Jones. Due to the executive order of Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb, the South Bend Common Council meeting will be legally held by way of a virtual meeting by using Microsoft Teams applications. At this time, our invocation will be given by 5th District Councilman Jake Teska at this time.
Thank you, President White. If everyone will bow with me. Oh Lord, please instruct us and teach us in the way that we should conduct this meeting. And please counsel us with your loving eye on us. Let our aims in this meeting be aligned with your direction. Let our plans be orchestrated by you. Father, let your will be done in this meeting so that this can be a meeting that is based upon your desires for us. Whatever it is that you want to result from this meeting, Lord, let it happen. Amen.
Thank you for that invocation. At this time, Mrs. Jones, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Councilmember Davis. He's absent. Councilmember McBride.
Present.
Councilmember Warner.
Here.
Councilmember Teshka.
Here.
Councilmember Niskowski.
Here.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan.
Present.
Councilmember Hammond.
Present.
Vice President White. I'm sorry, President White. I was reading
That's
wrong.
fine. That's fine. Present.
Okay, we have 8 present.
Thank you so much. We will not have a report from the subcommittee on minutes, so I will go to special business. There is no special business. We'll move to agenda item number 6, reports from the city offices. I'm very pleased to bring before the council Mrs. Cynthia Simmons, Director of 311 Center. She will give us a brief update in regards to the center and any impact that COVID might have had on her calls. And then we go to the council members for you be able to ask a question or two. As you notice, we have a very full agenda. So at this time, Mrs. Simmons, we ask that you state your name and address, please.
I apologize, I was muted. My name is Cynthia Simmons Taylor, 5223 Floral Place, South Bend. I'm attempting to share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. And so what we would do is just say that, you know, we are continuing to carry on excellence, empowerment, accountability, inclusion, and innovation. Let me see if I can get my next slide here. For some reason, it is not advancing for me. Okay, great. Just wanted to share the mission that we put together some years back. It is a very lengthy mission, so you will not see this often, but it helps you to understand our heartbeat and how we do have the pulse of the city from taking calls from residents and understanding what seems to be most important to them. So our mission is to facilitate efficient and effective communication between the residents of the city and local government. 311 liaisons are committed to actively listening to the concerns of each caller by transmitting the information received into the city's tracking database, which we will refer to later as CRM. This process allows for quantitative evaluation of the services offered in South Bend. The team's effort provides valuable data, giving city departments, employees, and officials a comprehensive view of the areas of concern for our residents. It is our goal to impact the entire city by improving the overall standards of departmental service agreements and thereby the overall efficiency and perception of city government. 311 will empower and equip residents to partner with our mayor and other government officials to develop and strengthen the city of South Bend. Again, I think I may have had some help getting to the next slide. Whoever helped me out, if you could help me again. So in order for us to effectively complete our mission or fulfill it, we have to know our residents, which we get to know them because we talk to them. And because there are only 8 of us in the call center, the residents get to know us and we get to know them. We also have to understand the residents and their needs, recognize their sources of motivation, and work with both our residents and various business units and departments. If we could advance the slide once again, that would be great. So we utilize CRM, which is a customer relationship management tool. And what we do with that is we report resident requests, issues, and concerns. Each department developed knowledge-based articles, which we refer to as KBAs, to address the more frequently reported concerns and service requests. The service request is sent directly from 311 to the department via CRM and through a service request. This centralized reporting allows every caller's concern or request to be input, tracked, etc. So in other words, nothing falls off the grid. Everybody should be receiving the same level of service because their information is being input as we get their calls. We transitioned to Microsoft Dynamics in around 2017. This system interfaces at some level with the programs that various departments found most efficient for their needs. As a result, 311 does some duplication by inputting information both in CRM and also in Routeware for solid waste. We put it into Acela for neighborhood code enforcement, in PetPoint for South Bark, and in Naviline for the utility. If we could advance the slide, please. Thank you. In 7 years, we did handle 1 million contacts. Those contacts were with 7 liaisons, and it was via telephone, email, and then we get voice messages and sometimes text. Please advance the slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our transition in the pandemic. The 311 team, when implemented, we all were assigned laptops. We take those laptops home every evening because we know we are on call if we should be called in to help with emergency management, or the mayor has something else that we need to do. Even while the city has been closed, 311 has continued to operate. We operate from our office, which is in the building department, in the back of building department. But we also have a remote site, which is solid waste on Riverside. We have a remote site because in taking so many of the city's calls, we know that we cannot afford to be without service to the residents. So there have been a couple of times when maybe there was a gas leak or what have you downtown, and people had to evacuate. We went to Riverside to continue to take calls. I wanted to, can you go back to that slide, please? I wanted just to highlight that we had a virtual seamless transition into teleworking, we had been requesting to move closer to completing a transition to home smoothly in the event that it became necessary or in order to keep the team safe. And so I just wanted you to know that we virtually picked up from our normal site, went to our homes, and were able to begin taking calls pretty much seamlessly. Thank you. If you would advance the slide, please. This is just a snapshot of what we see. We use Cisco Finesse, which is a voice over IP system, which also eased us in transitioning to home. It just helps you to understand that we do hold our liaisons accountable and we know what they are doing, whether we are in the office or not. So at this time that we took this snapshot, there were 8 calls waiting. The longest call had been in the queue for 4 minutes and 35 seconds. We had 7 agents logged in, 4 agents talking, 2 not ready. Those 2 would be myself and their supervisor, and 1 agent was wrapping up after a call. They get 45 seconds after a call to wrap up the paperwork. And we also have a Spanish queue for those residents who only speak Spanish. We have 2 bilingual agents that take those calls. Next slide, please. Again, this is just to show you that we know when an agent is talking, how long they've been talking, when they're not ready, if they're logged out, if they're in wrap out. They log out for breaks, they log out for lunch, and we get special codes for that. Thank you. If you can advance the slide. There were additional KBAs that resulted from COVID. We had a COVID-19 KBA, which we utilized 936 times since mid-March. And referral for coronavirus information, we utilized that 244 times. We got 79 calls in about the isolation quarantine center and 492 211 calls. Service levels did change during COVID because it was such a fluid situation. We really had to stay in close contact with department heads so that we could provide answers to residents when facilities had closed. As you know, the utility service level changed in that, well, maybe not their service level, but their availability, and that people could no longer go in the office. They did remain open through the drive-through. Solid waste was not able to continue picking up bags because we wanted to keep their team safe, and handling bags was not the thing to do. VPA had many, many closings, and we had to just stay on top of that. Code enforcement stopped doing like interior inspections due to the outbreak. And then the animal resource center, you couldn't surrender animals. You couldn't go there in person anymore. And so we had to continue to explain these service level changes to residents as they called in. Next slide, please. Okay. I tried to stay in the 15 minutes.
Excellent. You have 1 minute left. So we're going to go to questions. Mrs. Simmons Taylor, we thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. I'm now going to go to council members. I'm going to start with the hand that I see now, and that's Councilwoman Lori Hammond.
Thank you, President White, and thank you for that presentation. I have a question, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because I think 311 is a wonderful service. If you could clarify for me, though, one of the processes when a message is left, when the system recommends that you leave your number and a message, should we anticipate getting a return phone call to follow up? Because I've done this 2 or 3 times and I have not received received a follow-up call. I'm just wondering what the process is.
Absolutely, Council Person Hammond. When you are in the 311 system, if you elect a callback, you absolutely should get a callback within a couple of hours. We receive callbacks every day. Now, we also have another system in place for callbacks, and that's with the utility. And so if you are actually with 311 expecting a callback and you do not get it, I would like to talk to you offline and get the number that you called from, because what we will do is trace the call to see exactly what happened. We do have that capability. We have people that have said, you know, I didn't get a call back. We trace it back and find that the liaison has left a message. Nobody answered when they called back. And then sometimes people have been in the utilities queue. And we don't have any control over the callbacks if you go to another department's queue. But absolutely, if things are working properly, you should receive a call back and remain in the same place in line. So you should not be penalized for selecting the callback feature.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan.
Thank you, President White. I don't really have a question. I just have a quick comment, and that is I wanted to thank Ms. Simmons. Before COVID had hit, I was able to attend your anniversary celebration and listen to about an hour of calls with one of your staff, and that was hugely informative. And when we come out of COVID and our staff are safe back in the building, I would highly recommend others on council to do the same. It's amazing to me, the professionalism that's in place there, but also the amount of data that is collected in that center. So I could ask any question about whether my trash was picked up, whether my husband put the trash out and he missed the trash, and they were able to look that up. So thank you for your service and for your presentation.
You are very welcome, and we always invite council members to come in and take a seat and take a listen, because it is very enlightening. I think you get a much better idea of how things work and what it is that we do, and you're always welcome.
Thank you as well. Councilwoman Sharon McBride.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to follow up too, and you all do a great job, and I know you have a lot of calls that comes through there. I have a lot of people in my district that calls, most of them complaining that there was no response, and there are, like Councilwoman Thomas Morgan just stated, you guys have record of whether you picked up trash or if a person's trash was not outside, but I still get calls about people not responsive. What is the most complaint, if you know that information, that a person calls and say that there's a no response from 311? Is it that it has to be referred out to another department, or is it multiple complaints like about trash pickup? If you can answer that.
Usually, Council Person McBride, it has left 311 arena, and they have left a message. And I'm not trying to throw any other department under the bus, but it has left our arena and it has gone into the voicemail of someone else who would be able to assist them. We get people to call us back and say, I know you transferred me, but I didn't hear anything back. And so this has happened. And when we sit down with various departments to come up and develop the departmental agreement, expectations are clear. If the resident wants a call back from the department, they have that right. When we send it to the department, however, we put a clear note on there that they want a call back from the department. We had some issues with service delays, and what 311 will do is provide the information to the resident as we are given it from the various departments. When those things change, It can look like 311 gave misinformation, but what we do is we give the information that we have at that time, and until such time as a department updates us, that is the information that is given.
Thank you so much, and for the collaboration with the other departments, because I think overall it works pretty good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And we do things, if I just could add real quickly here and not take up much time. For instance, we had extra pickups from solid waste that were not going to be run today because of staffing issues. And what I did is got with the Director of Code Enforcement to let her know that this was occurring so that we didn't end up citing residents because they had a couch or a mattress or what have you at the curb. And so it just kind of keeps things neat and tied up in a bow when we just kind of collaborate and make sure that we're informing each other of things that are going on as they unfold.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll yield my time.
Council members, are there any council members who would like to make a comment or ask a question? Councilman Kenneth Lee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Simmons, for that great presentation. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go behind the scenes and see what Rachel got to see. What are some of the things that our community needs to know? I've had people say, I'll call 311. I haven't got a response. What is our best response to our people when they make that comment to us?
I would like to invite council members to reach out to me directly, because for every complaint that you get like that, we would like to probe that to find out where it is, because one of the things that 311 is responsible for as well is highlighting broken processes. From time to time, we do have a break-in processes. And so that's when we take the opportunity to try to bring resolve for that. But I do invite you all to reach out to me for those individual cases, and we can find out just exactly what is going on, because we want people to get answers to their questions.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sheila Niskoski.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Simmons, for the presentation. I learned a lot by seeing the screens and the data and how that is all kept. The one question I do have is, and I don't know if you can answer it, but you said there was over 1 million calls that you took within a time period. Do you have a sense of how many calls that you may have forwarded to the different departments and have had to go back and rehash, no one answered me back, or no one followed up with this call? Because I get that too as well.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering, do you have any of that data on follow-ups?
Yes, well, we do have data on the number of calls transferred. Calls can be transferred for a number of reasons per the contract. It can be transferred because the department asked to handle that for themselves. So it's transferred per agreement. It can be transferred because we need additional information for that customer. And so we do have the stats on how many calls are transferred. In fact, I was looking at solid waste and water works. Solid waste, we've handled without transfer about 99.58% of their calls. Waterworks, it's more like 94.9%. But it's really timely that you ask that question, because we have a new SB stat, which is the SB stat for customer service. And repeat calls is one of the things that is on our plate to resolve, to find out why are residents having to call more than one time about the same situation.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Are there any other council members wishing to ask a question at this time? Seeing none, Mrs. Cynthia Simmons Taylor, We sincerely appreciate your presentation. It was very informative, and you can rest assured, once we have the clearance, that many of us will be taking time to kind of, come and visit the center. Thank you for that invitation, but most importantly, thank you for your presentation.
You are so welcome.
Well, I would now entertain a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk Jones, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Yes.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Niskoski,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. This portion of the meeting will be turned over to the Chair of the Committee of the Whole, Councilwoman Sheila Niskoski.
Thank you, President White. The Committee of the Whole is now in session. This is the portion of the council's meeting where bills are given a second reading and public hearing. I wish to share with you that bills that will be given a second reading and public hearing have been given a first reading and set for committee meeting and public hearing prior to this evening's meeting. In addition, you will hear from the chairperson of the committee where the bill was discussed and the result of their discussion. If the proposed ordinance is a zoning ordinance, a report from a staff member of area plan will be given. In all other situations, the formal presentation on the proposed ordinance will immediately follow the committee report. The formal presentation shall be untimed. Our first bill is Bill 3620. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 3620 a second reading?
Okay. Bill 3620, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending the South Bend zoning ordinance by repealing the designation of a local historic landmark, St. Joseph, ordinance number 127-78, for property located at 60649 Hickory Road, Councilmanic District 5, South Bend, Indiana, 46614.
Councilwoman Niskoski, I noticed that Attorney Bob Palmer had his hand raised.
Yes, Attorney Palmer?
Thank you. I believe that this bill needs a motion to table until September 28th.
Yes. Do I get that, ask for the committee report so they can report that? Yes.
Yes.
Is there a committee report?
Yes, it is. The ZNA, Zoning and Annexation Committee, met this afternoon and would like to make a motion to postpone Bill number 3620 until September 28th meeting.
Okay, there has been a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Clerk Jones, would you call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Niskoski,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Our next bill is Bill number 3720. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 3720 a second reading?
Yes. 3720, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at the northwest corner of Scott and Wayne Streets, Councilmanic District 1, South Bend, Indiana, 46601.
Is there a committee report?
Yes, there is. The Zoning and Annexation Committee met this afternoon, and we bring forth this bill with a favorable recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is the petitioner present, and if you are, I please ask that you state your name and address and share with us the key points regarding the bill that is before us.
Yes, hi, Council. Joe Molnar, zoning specialist with the City of South Bend, offices on the 14th floor of this building. I did request control for the screen to share the PowerPoint. Oh, looks like I got it. Awesome. All right, 1 second, please. This bill is for property located at the northwest corner of Wayne Street and Scott Street, outlined in red here, all under the same.
Mr. Molnar, I do not see the presentation. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, you're fine. Thank you for letting me know.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like the computer is taking a break here. So we'll continue without the PowerPoint for a couple of moments. So this is a property located at the northwest corner of West Wayne Street and Scott Street. I think we'll be back online here in a second. So that property, it's currently vacant land that used to have homes, I'm sure 30, 40, 50 years ago, but has gone vacant. It's just immediately west of downtown. The proposal is for a special exception for duplexes. Currently, the land is zoned U1, Urban Neighborhood 1, and under that zoning, which is primarily a single-family zoning district, you need to have a special exception if you want to do anything more than you can only do duplexes. But if you want to do duplexes, you need to go through this special exception process. The proposal is currently for 3 duplexes for a total of 6 units on the site, all facing Wayne Street. The city staff thought this was a really good opportunity. This is kind of on the edge of downtown, transitioning into our more traditional single-family neighborhoods. So this is probably a good place to have a little bit increased density, especially if it meets the character of the neighborhood. We're working with the petitioner, South Bend Heritage, to make sure that the buildings themselves reflect the neighborhood and really, mirror the neighborhood and are complementary. Just north of this site is a couple small apartments that we think that this is kind of state law. City staff has to look at a number of items, and one of those being, does this meet that was approved by council and the mayor? And this particularly does. The policy H1.1 recommends that the city do everything to encourage residential developments to contain a mix of housing types, densities, price ranges, and amenities. We think these proposed duplexes are in line with the recommendations and will help foster that diverse housing types that we talked about at committee that this neighborhood already has. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, or if the petitioner's here, he was here at committee, he might want to add a couple words as well. The site will get all new sidewalks with the proposal. Right now, the sidewalks on Scott Street are almost gone. The grass has completely overtaken it, so that'll be good for the site. This does come to you with a favorable recommendation from the Board of Zoning Appeals as well.
Okay, thank you. Council members, do you have any questions for the petitioner? Okay. I don't see any questions. At this time, we'll go to the public portion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of Bill 3720?
Hi, this is Donna, City Clerk. I do not see anyone expressing interest to speak on this bill.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Jones. Well, at this point then, the public hearing on Bill 3720 is now closed. Council members, would you wish to make any statements regarding Bill 3720?
You have Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan, followed by Councilwoman Sharon McBride, followed by Councilman Kenneth Lee.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan, you'd like to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Nitzkotsky. I just want to briefly reiterate some comments I made in committee for the public tonight, and that is I support the special exception. that is being offered here. I very much appreciate the openness of South Bend Heritage to work with the neighborhood organization as they continue to develop the architectural plans for the homes. And I also am grateful and thankful for their openness, especially the architect Pat Lynch, to explore sustainable material and sustainable build at this site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sharon McBride, you had a statement?
Thank you. I'm excited about the build in this neighborhood and following the comprehensive plan and giving people an opportunity to live in decent, affordable housing. I'll yield my comments.
Thank you. Councilman Kenneth Lee, you had a statement?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think that it's going to be great, beneficial for the First District to get this type of housing in that area, and being able to give affordable housing to people is one of the things that was brought out in the neighborhood plans, and so we're glad to see that it's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other council members that would like to make a statement? Okay.
Council Chair, I would like to thank South Bend Heritage Foundation for the continued investment within our community. This is a very exciting venture, and I can't wait to see when the duplexes go up. But we thank them for their continued commitment.
Yes, thank you, President White. I could not agree more. If there are no other comments, I would like to entertain a motion regarding Bill 3720.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Clerk Jones, would you please call the roll?
I'll clarify that. That's a motion to for favorable recommendation.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilman Warner.
Thank you.
Correct. I'll second that.
Okay. Councilmember McBride?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka?
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky?
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
President White?
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Bill 3720 will be sent to full council with a favorable recommendation. We're going to move on to Bill 3820. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 3820 a second reading?
Okay. 3820, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 4303 Technology Drive, Councilmanic District, South Bend, Indiana, 46628.
Thank you. Is there a committee report?
Yes, the Zoning and Annexation Committee met this afternoon, and we are sending this bill 3820 to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Councilwoman McBride. Is the petitioner present? If you are, I ask that you state your name and address and share with us the key points regarding the bill that is before us.
Thank you, Council. Once again, Joe Molnar, Zoning Specialist for the City of South Bend. Offices located on the 14th floor of the County City Building. This property is located at the far northwest of the City of South Bend, just west of the bypass and north of the airport. This is once again a special exception, just like the previous bill. All this land that you see here in this photo is zoned I industrial. This parcel and every parcel that touches it is zoned I industrial. But if you want to do heavy industrial uses in the City of South Bend, that requires this extra check just to make sure that it's going in places that it is appropriate for heavy industrial use. We think that this is one of those cases. The current zoning, like I said, is all industrial. here is a view of the site. So this is already a very large building, as you can see, in an industrial park. I was a good couple hundred feet away. As you see, it's quite large. What they want to do is they're actually almost nearly doubling the site and adding on to it. And then outlined here in red is where that outside storage of the chemicals will be used that requires this special exception. Again, the comprehensive plan, and we think it was a good policy, is that there recommends that we retain existing businesses and recruit new ones to the city. This would be the expansion of a current business in the city, one that is really new, but it is an expansion of a current business too. So we think that's exciting. And, if we're going to have these types of uses in the city, we think this is an ideal spot, away from residential and, retail and purely in an industrial space. So this is definitely an appropriate place for it. This comes to you from the staff of the Board of Zoning Appeals and from the Board of Zoning Appeals itself with a favorable recommendation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Molnar. Council members, do you have any questions of the petitioner? Councilman Troy Warner?
I believe I remember from the BZA packet that this is Patterson Logistics. Is that
Tripac?
Tripac. And what's the tanks for? The purpose?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Okay. Mike Danch from Danch Harner & Associates, 1643 Commerce Drive in South Bend, representing the petitioners. This is the Tripac facility. What they'd like to be able to do is buy this particular piece of property. If council remembers, we were before the board a couple of years ago for their NIMS Parkway and Kenmore Street property. They've actually run out of space. They want to buy this property and continue their operations. Those tanks are mainly for the aerosol and chemicals. There's nothing that's toxic in those tanks. The maximum height of those tanks would only be 12 foot. They meet all the federal and state standards. This is basically for their operation for their consumer products divisions, for making the kind of the aerosols. They also make the hand sanitizers. Those are the kind of products they make for the consumer. There's no toxic problems. We're meeting all the setback requirements for the tanks. They will meet all the safety codes just like they did over on NIMS and Kenmore Street. And we have to be before you because this type of use does require a special exception. And if you got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Danch.
Thank you, Councilman Warner. Councilman Kenneth Lee, I see you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Nagowski. Just want to say that we are excited in the first district to see a business expanding, and hopefully it'll bring more jobs and continue to do great. And we're just excited about growth in the first district. So just want to say I'm supportive of it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other councilman? Councilwoman Lori Hammond.
Thank you. Joe or Mr. Danch, I'm just wondering if there is any risk of combustion or explosion with these tanks, and if so, what are the safety measures that have been put into place?
No, there's no chance of explosion. These are basically the chemicals and for the aerosol and those types of products. For all the standards for the tanks, there's a double set of standards they have to meet. They meet all the federal guidelines for protection for tanks, and they meet all the state codes. Those are the ones that make absolutely sure that all safety procedures are in effect. There are certain setback requirements that are designated by the state and federal government for these tanks. There's also a containment area that's required to be placed around these tanks. So even if there's a spill, that containment area is handled on site within a concrete containment area. So they meet all those safety standards. There's not an explosion possibility with these.
Good to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any other council members wishing to ask the petitioner a question? Okay. Seeing none, at this time we will go to the public hearing portion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of Bill 3820?
This is Dawn, City Clerk. There is no one that has signed up to speak for this portion.
Councilwoman Niskoski, you do have Mr. Dan Buckenmeyer, who has his hand raised.
Just put it up, so sorry. This is Dan Buckenmeyer, 14th floor. At the risk of being redundant, another department in DCI, but the Department of Business Development wants to forward our own favorable recommendation and support for this. Again, as I noted in committee, this is a fairly new company to South Bend. About a year ago, they came with similar requests, as Mr. Danch said, for some holding tanks and also for a personal property tax abatement. And this is part one of the same process, again, for a near doubling of their operations. So they moved in from out of state. They brought a lot of great jobs to South Bend that has expanded very quickly. We're thrilled to have them in town, and you'll be hearing a little more from them at your next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckenmeyer. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of Bill 3820?
Okay, I'm looking again, and I do not see anyone else that is signed up to speak.
In opposition of?
No, I don't see anyone.
All right, thank you, Clerk Jones. At this point in the hearing on Bill 3820 is now closed. Council members, do you wish to make a statement regarding Bill 3820? Okay. Seeing none, I will now entertain a motion regarding Bill 3820.
I move to send to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. It has been a motion and seconded. Clerk Jones, would you please take the roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Teshka.
Aye.
Councilmember Niskoski.
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember McBride.
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you, Clerk Jones. Bill 3820 will be sent to full council with a favorable recommendation. We are now going to move on to Bill 3920. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 3920 a second reading?
3920, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 316 East Monroe Street, Councilmanic District 2, South Bend, Indiana, 46601.
Thank you. Is there a committee report?
Yes, ZNA met today, and the petitioner has requested to postpone or table Bill 3820 until our September 28th meeting. So I would like to make a motion to postpone Bill 3820 until September 28th.
Thank
Second.
you. Okay, there has been a motion and seconded.
For the record, this is the city clerk. For the record, you need to say 3920. Councilmember McBride said 3820.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Look, I need new glasses.
Y'all do.
3920. Thank you for that correction. I appreciate that. So I would like to make a motion that bill number 3920 is tabled until our September 28th meeting.
Second.
Okay, so the bill, there's been a motion and seconded. Clerk Jones, would you please take the roll call for Bill 3920?
Yes. Councilmember McBride.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Teshka.
Aye.
Councilmember Niskoski.
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
President White,
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Bill 3920 has been tabled till September 28th. I will now entertain a motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole and report back to full council.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Clerk Jones, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nizgoski,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
President White,
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. The full council is back in session. This is the portion of our meeting where bills are given a third reading and action is taken regarding bills that have been heard during the committee of the whole as well at the committee level. Prior to moving into this section of our meeting, I'm going to ask Attorney Bob Palmer to outline the steps as well as the expectations that we have. For example, council members can make comments, but this is not the time to debate or to ask questions. Attorney Palmer.
Thank you, President White. Bills on third reading come before the council after the public hearing and their opportunity to ask questions after the second hearing or second reading and during the public hearing. Consequently, there are no questions or debate permitted during bills on third reading. Council members are permitted to make quick comments or statements regarding their vote, but it's not a situation for debate. Also, if there's a situation in which a council member believes that there could be a possible conflict of interest, that should be disclosed before the third reading, and the remainder of the council will be free to ask questions on that, and we'll vote on whether or not that council member has the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Attorney Palmer. At this time, I would ask Clerk Jones to please give Bill 36-20 a third reading.
3620, third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending the South Bend zoning ordinance by repealing the designation of local historic landmarks, St. Joseph Ordinance number 127-78 for property located at 60649 Hickory Road, Councilmanic District number 5, South Bend, Indiana, 46614.
And I noticed that Attorney Bob Palmer, you have your hand up.
Correct, President White. This was one of the bills that was postponed, so there's no purpose for a third reading.
So we don't have to take action on this bill?
Correct. It did not come out of committee.
Thank you so much. So we'll move now directly to Bill 37-20. Clerk Jones, would you give Bill 30-20 a third reading?
3720, third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at the northwest corner of Scott and Wayne Streets, Councilmanic District number 1, South Bend, Indiana, 46601.
Thank you. Councilwoman Nizgoski, is there a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole regarding this bill?
Yes, President White. This was came out of the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation to full council.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion regarding this recommendation from a council member.
Motion to move Bill 3720
With a favorable,
with a favorable recommendation.
okay. Is it moved and seconded? Are there any comments that council members would like to make at this time?
Just clarify, this is a
Councilmember-
motion for passage, correct?
Yes, yes, it is. Council members, do you have any statements you would like to make? If not, the motion has been made and it's been seconded to move to pass Bill 37-20. Ms. Jones, will you call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee, Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. This bill has been passed. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 38-29 a third reading?
Is it 3820?
Yes, please.
Okay. 3820, third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 4303 Technology Drive, Councilmanic District Number 1, South Bend, Indiana, 46628.
Thank you. Councilwoman Nisgowsky, is there a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole regarding Bill 3820?
Yes, President White. Bill number 3820 was sent out of the Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation to full council.
And the recommendation is for passage at this time.
I move
Yes.
for passage.
I
Okay.
second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments that council members would like to make prior to taking action on this bill? Seeing no one. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
This bill has now been passed. We'll move into the resolution portion of our meeting. Clerk Jones, would you please read Resolution 20-27?
Yes. 2027, a resolution confirming the adoption of a declaratory resolution designating certain areas within the city of South Bend, Indiana, commonly known as 505, 507, 511, and 513 South Michigan Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46601, as an economic revitalization area for purposes of a 9-year real property tax abatement for Commonwealth Development Corporation of America.
Thank you. As this is a confirming resolution, there is no committee report. I now ask the sponsor or presenters to present Resolution 20-27.
Thank you, President White. This is Dan Buckenmeyer, Director of Business Development, office on the 14th floor of County City Building. So just before we get into the specific one for Commonwealth, just want to remind council that 2 tax abatements that you're going to hear about right now are both in relation to tax credit programs. So Ms. Timmer from our department came in and gave some descriptions of what that means in committee, so I'm not going to reiterate that. But the long and short of it is that these tax abatements will only be granted in the event that either of these petitioners get chosen as a tax credit project by the state of Indiana, which they would find out in a few months. So starting with the Commonwealth Bill, and I'll be very brief with this, as we often are with the confirming resolutions. This is the former, what was known as the Fat Daddy's block, if you will. So it is a great reuse for this now vacant site, and I'm not going to reread the slide to you. You can all read yourselves, but I'll just introduce real quickly Mr. Jonathan Nesberg and allow him to hit any highlights he would like to before you take your vote.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me here again. And I think I appreciate the opportunity to move forward with this project in the city. And I'm here to answer any.
Would you state your name and address for the record, please? Mr.
Yep, Jonathan Nesberg, and I am, my address is 2639 Nolan Avenue in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I don't have a presentation prepared, but I'm happy to answer any direct questions.
Council members, do you have any questions of the petitioner or from Mr. Dan Buckenmeyer from Community Investment regarding Resolution 20-27? Any questions from council members? Councilwoman Sheila Niskoski.
Thank you, President White. I realize that this is dependent on the state giving the award for this project, but I just wanted to ask the question because I don't believe it was ever fully got back to me on an answer. But if this project is to proceed in South Bend, will local contractors be able to bid on this building?
Yes. Yep, they will, and that will be our preference as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from council members? Seeing none, I will now go to the public hearing portion. Clerk Jones, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in support of Resolution 20-27?
There is no one wishing to speak in support of it, or no one that has signed up to speak in support of this resolution. And Mannix is available to answer questions about tax abatement. So I don't know if she has anything that she would like to add.
That will be on the next one.
That's the next one.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone present wishing to speak in opposition?
No, there is no one present wishing to speak in opposition of this resolution.
I need to go back. I just saw a hand by Councilwoman Lori Hammond before we move into the council portion.
I'm just wondering, I'm looking at this slide. It says 2 new jobs. 60 units seems like a large property and a lot of upkeep. And I'm wondering how that will be managed by 2 individuals. Can someone speak on that?
Yeah, sure. For 60 units, it's pretty typical to have one full-time property manager and then one maintenance technician as well. If there are issues that come up, additional maintenance issues that come up with the property, we do hire subcontractors such as a plumber or an electrician to come and fix those. So that is how we generally operate projects with just two people. And another example would be a landscaping company that upkeeps the landscape.
Okay, thank you.
The public hearing portion is now closed. Council members, what is your pleasure regarding Resolution 20-27?
Move for passage.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I think we're moving for adoption at this time.
Yes, adopt. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Niskoski.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember McBride.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Teshka.
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Resolution 20-27 has been adopted. Clerk Jones, will you please read Resolution 20-29?
Yes. 2020-29, a resolution confirming the adoption of a declaratory resolution designating a certain area within the city of South Bend, Indiana, commonly known as 1714 St. Joseph, 221 East Dayton, 513 East Dayton, 517 East Dayton, 521 East Dayton, 410 East Dayton, 224 East Dewbell, 404 East Dewbell, 301 East Dewbell, 212 East Dewbell as a residentially distressed area for purposes of a 5-year residential real property tax abatement for South Bend Mutual Homes.
Thank you. This is a confirming resolution, and there's no committee report. I will now ask the presenter, as well as if there's anyone from the administration that would like to be part of the the presentation.
Thank you. Dan Buckenmeyer again, Director of Business Development, 14th floor of the City County Building. So again, this is another tax credit program. It's a little bit different than the last. It's not a single building, but rather 10, which will add to another 14, which you extended the designation period on. So a total of 24 single family homes that would be built out of this project. So a very exciting project for South Bend on the west and south side. And I will allow Ann Mannix to add anything she would like, and we can answer any questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Ann Mannix.
Hello, I'm happy to be here tonight, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Will you state your name and address?
Oh, okay. Ann Mannix, M-A-N-N-I-X, 724 West Washington.
Thank you. At this time, prior to moving to the public hearing portion, council members, do you have any questions from Mr. Dan Buckenmeyer or from Mrs. Ann Mannix? I do see a hand. Councilwoman Sharon McBride.
I'm sorry, I'm so excited. I don't have any questions.
Oh, wow, okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'm excited too. Councilman Troy Warner, I saw your hand.
You got a comment. I'll hold it till after the public.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, any questions that you would like to ask of the sponsor or the petitioner at this time? If not, we'll move to the public hearing portion. Councilman Kenneth Lee.
Ms. Mannix, we I'm just interested to know if our minority contractors are going to be part of helping to build these homes.
Yes.
What is your plan for that?
South Bend Heritage is the general contractor, and they will work to include minority contractors as subcontractors. And they've had pretty good luck. We've had trouble finding available contractors, but we'll do the best we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Councilman Troy Warner.
I just want to thank you very much, Ann, and South Bend Heritage for everything that you do for our community. Almost all of our problems in the community, if we can get more affordable housing and more jobs, we can make a lot of those problems go away. I'm always happy to support anything we can do for affordable housing. We'll be keeping our fingers crossed and saying prayers going forward, hoping this we get the blessing from the feds on it. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to be in a community like South Bend where people support good projects.
Great. And Mrs. Mannix, we're so fortunate to have you as well. I consider this as good trouble. Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll keep pushing it.
I'll keep pushing. Well, now, Councilwoman Sheila Niskoski.
Thank you, President White. At this time, and I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I do need to disclose that we have done some work for our company, Nisgotsky Plumbing has done some work for South Bend Heritage in the past. So I just want to make sure that the council feels comfortable if I proceed with a vote.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask our attorney, Bob Palmer, to weigh in at this time.
Thank you, President White. Councilwoman Nisgotsky can answer any questions any council member might have regarding any personal economic gain or material personal gain of any kind that she might encounter with this project. If they have no questions, there should be a motion to allow Council Member Nisgotsky to participate with the vote, and that would need to pass by a majority vote of the council members.
Thank you. Council members, you've heard from Councilwoman Sheila Nisgotsky. Do you have any questions at this time? Okay, I think I saw two hands. Councilwoman Lori Hammond.
Yes, I would just like to know from Councilwoman Nisgotsky, will you be working directly on these locations, or is it just that you have worked in the past with South Bend Heritage?
Thank you, Councilwoman Hammond, for your question. Yes, we have done work in the past for them on projects that has arisen. We have not been asked to bid on any of these particular homes. I really didn't even know about them before they came to council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Councilman Kenneth Lee, did I see your hand up?
You all know that I'm new to this, so I'm on the board for the South Bend Heritage, and I didn't know if I needed to disclose that now, or I am a member of the board, but I will not be in the position. It would not result in any economic or material personal gain for me. So,
thank you. We do have a question that Attorney Bob has indicated that we need to have a motion to pass that will allow Councilwoman Sheila Nisgotsky to participate in the vote. Council members, are there any other questions first regarding Councilwoman Sheila Nisgotsky? If not, I would like to entertain a motion.
I move to allow Councilmember Nisgotsky to vote on this.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Warner. Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Tashka.
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgotsky.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
aye.
Councilmember McBride.
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Attorney Palmer, would we need to have a motion regarding Councilman Kenneth Lee being a member of the board, South Bend Heritage Board?
Yes, we will, President White, since he has disclosed what could be viewed as a conflict by some people. It's up to the council to determine if there would be a material economic gain or other material personal benefit.
Thank you. I see Councilman Troy Warner. You have your hand up.
I just had a question for Councilman Lee, as we asked of Councilwoman Nisgotsky. Councilman Lee, given that you're on the board, you still feel you'll be able to make a fair and impartial vote in this and decide what's best for the citizens of South Bend on a whole and the residents of the 1st District?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I saw another hand, Councilman Jake Tuska.
Yes, I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it just for the good of the record and the public. Councilman Lee, as the board position that you have with South Bend Heritage, is that a lucrative board position? Meaning, do you are you paid by South Bend Heritage at all for that position?
Not at all. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council members? If not, I would like to entertain a motion regarding Councilman Kenneth Lee, give him permission to participate in the vote based on his sharing that he is a member of the South Bend Heritage Board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. I'll now entertain a motion regarding Resolution 20-29.
I'd like to make a motion for adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Resolution 20-29 has been adopted. We'll now move to first reading. Mrs. Jones, will you please give Bill 12-20 a first reading? This is a substitute bill, and after the first reading, I need to entertain a motion to hear the substitute version prior to sending it to committee.
Okay. Bill 40-20. First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, for budget transfers for various departments within the City of South Bend, Indiana, for the year 2020.
Clerk Jones, are you reading 12-20? Bill, that's the bill first reading.
Oh.
That's the substitute bill.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, I got it. Okay. 12-20, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, adding Article 1, Division 2, Sections 2-12.2.1, 2, and including 2-12.2.11 of Chapter 2 of the South Bend Municipal Code to create a community police review board and procedures governing the board.
I would now like to entertain a motion to accept the substitute bill.
Would like to entertain a motion to accept the substitute bill and to send it to the Community Relations Committee on 9/28.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I want to make sure that we do not have to accept the substitute prior to, after which sending it to the Community Relation Committee. I think we can do that in one motion. So the motion is to accept the substitute bill 12-20 and send it to the Community Relation Committee for second and third reading and public hearing on September the 28th, 2020. I believe that the motion has been made and it's been seconded. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teshka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Clerk Jones, will you please give first reading to Bill 40-20?
Okay. 4020, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, for budget transfers for various departments within the City of South Bend, Indiana for the year 2020.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to send Bill 40-20 to the Personnel and Finance Committee for committee meeting and public hearing on September the 28th, 2020.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teshka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Clerk Jones, will you please now read Bill 41-20?
4120, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating additional funds for certain departmental and city services operations for the year 2020 of $1,778,948 from the Motor Vehicle Highway Fund, number 202. $2,053,104 from Federal Grant Fund 212. $80,000 from Code Enforcement Fund 230. $1,660,000 from the Fire Department Capital Fund 287. $2,262,160 from the County Options Income Tax Fund 404. $523,000 from the Major Moves Construction Fund, number 412. $375,000 from the Solid Waste Capital Fund, number 611. $36,000 from the Sewage Works Capital Fund, number 642. And reducing appropriated funds in the amount of $3,920,654 from the Equipment Vehicle Leasing Fund, number 750.
Yes, I would like to entertain a motion to send this bill 4120 to Personnel and Finance and Committee and public hearing for September the 28th.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teshka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Will you now please give first reading to Bill 42-20?
4220, first reading on an ordinance of the City of South Bend, Indiana, levying taxes and fixing the rate of taxation for the purpose of raising revenue to meet the necessary expenses of the civil city of South Bend for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021.
I would now like to entertain a motion to send this bill 42-20 to the council for public hearing on September the 28th, 2020, and set for third reading on October the 12th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
President White,
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Will you now give first reading to Bill 43-20?
4320, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating monies for the purpose of defraying the expenses of the City of South Bend, Indiana for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2021, including all outstanding claims and obligations, and fixing a time when the same shall take effect.
Thank you. Would now like to entertain a motion to send Bill 43-20 to Personnel and Finance Committee for committee and public hearing on September the 28th and for third reading on October the 12th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
President White,
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Will you please give first reading to Bill 44-20?
4420, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating, adopting, and approving the South Bend Public Transportation Corporation's 2021 budget and levying the tax and fixing the rate of the taxation for the purpose of raising revenue to fund the South Bend Public Transportation Corporation, South Bend, Indiana, for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2021.
Thank you. I would like to entertain a motion to send Bill 44-20 to the Personnel and Finance Committee and set for council public hearing on September the 28th and third reading on October the 12th.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Warner,
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka,
Aye.
Councilmember Nisgowsky,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
President White,
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. We'll now move to unfinished business. I'm going to ask Attorney Bob Palmer to outline the process and the procedures and the time that will be allotted for the presentation and the council's role at this particular time. Attorney Palmer.
Thank you, President White. This is an appeal by the Northern Indiana Historical Society of the South Bend Historic Preservation Commission's denial of a certificate of appropriateness. This is a procedure by which the council simply reviews the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission for one of 5 bases to reverse the decision, those bases being arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with applicable law, contrary to constitutional right, power, privilege, or immunity, in excess of statutory jurisdiction, authority, limitations, or statutory rights, without observance of procedures required by applicable law or ordinance, or unsupported by substantial evidence. There will be no public hearing on this. The council is limited to what it was presented to the Historical Preservation Committee at their hearing. And the petitioner, the Northern Indiana Historical Society, will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present its argument. The Historical Preservation Commission will also have a maximum of 20 minutes to present their argument. And the Historical Society will then have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Members of the Common Council will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the parties with the maximum amount of time for all the questions together being 15 minutes. And the Common Council will then make a decision to either affirm or reverse the decision of the Historical Preservation Commission.
Thank you. Before moving forward, I noticed that Councilman Flora Warner, you had your hand up, as well as Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan.
Yes, President White, I was wondering if it would be appropriate to request a recess for about 5 minutes to get a cup of coffee and use the bathroom. I know how lawyers are. You give them time and they're going to use every single second of the time.
Okay, I have no problems with that. Then I'll take it back to the council members. You're right. We've been at it for quite some time, and a 5 minutes break would be in order, but I'm going to go to Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan. You had your hand up.
I do. I have a point of order, potential conflict of interest that I'd like to bring up. Shall I do that now or after our break?
Well, let's do the break and then we come back to the conflict and then we go right into the presentation thereafter. So we're going to
happy to make a motion for a break if that's required.
It is. So
okay, I'm for a 7-minute recess for
7
coffee
minutes
and a bathroom break.
Okay, when you get the 7 minutes, okay, 7 minutes. Is there a second to the request?
I second it.
Okay, so it is now 8:37. We're taking, I'm sorry, Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Oh, Lord.
Okay.
I don't think Troy's going to be able to wait.
Okay, right. Okay, Clerk Jones.
Councilmember Teska.
Aye.
Okay. Councilmember Nisgowsky.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember McBride.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
It is now 8:33. 7-minute break. We'll be back at 8:40.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you as well. It is now 8:40. The Southern Common Council is back in session. Prior to moving forward, I know Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan, and you would like to make a statement?
Thank you, President White. Before the council begins consideration of this appeal, according to section 2.8D of Municipal Code, I should like to inform the council members that I was recently made a member of the Board of Trustees of the Northern Historical Society. My first board meeting was August 31st. I have discussed the issue with council attorney and do not believe that I have substantial conflict of interest because my action on this appeal may not be influenced by any possible economic benefits or material personal gain, because there are no economic benefits or personal gains to be realized. I realize, however, that according to the ordinance, it is for the council to decide whether I may continue to participate in the deliberations and vote on the matter. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Councilwoman Morgan. Council members, do you have any questions regarding Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan's comments? Councilmember Jake Tusker, and then followed by Councilmember Troy Warner.
Yeah, thank you, President White. Just for consistency's sake, Councilmember Thomas Morgan, sorry. Just want to ask you the same question that I asked Councilmember Lee, and that would be whether or not this board position is lucrative and that it pays you a stipend or something of the sort.
I am not receiving any payment. It is not lucrative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Troy Warner.
Yeah, I have kind of two questions here. I guess one, at what date did you come on to the board? Were you involved in any kind of decision to appeal this, or was that decision made prior to you getting on to the board? And then the second question would be similar to Pastor Lee. Even though you're on the board, we're all involved in the community in different ways and wear different hats. But do you believe you can set that aside and make a fair and impartial decision here based upon what's best for the residents of the city of South Bend?
I do believe I can make a fair and impartial decision. My first board meeting was August 31st. I want to answer your first question clearly. You had asked if I was aware.
You were on board when any decision to appeal the HPC decision was made.
I was made aware that the museum would be appealing HPC after I was made a board member.
Are there any other questions from council members at this time? Any other questions or concerns? Council members need to entertain a motion regarding Council Rachel Thomas Morgan as it pertains to this issue that is before us.
I move to allow Councilmember Thomas Morgan to continue to participate in this deliberation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Nisgowsky.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan.
I'm sorry, so I am allowed to vote on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
The others did.
Aye.
Okay. Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember McBride.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
Councilmember Teshka.
Aye.
President White.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. We're now ready to go into the presentation. I will ask the clerk to keep track of the time. As Attorney Palmer has indicated, the first presentation will be 20 minutes, followed by the HPC, 20 minutes, a 5-minute rebuttal, and the council will have 15 minutes to ask questions amongst, well, we have 8 council
So
members.
it's
You have to
20,
be mindful.
so it's 20 minutes for each presentation and
That's-
then 15 minutes for questions?
Yes, that's the total council, but there's a 5-minute rebuttal.
Okay. For
So
each
it's
one.
20, 5-minute rebuttal, and then a 15-minute for the council discussions. And after that, then the council would have to come up with a recommendation. So we're looking at, for the total, 60 minutes.
Okay.
And the time would start at now, but I would like to ask the presenters to state your name and your address, and that you have 20 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, President White. Honorable members of the Common Council, my name is Jim Tousley. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Barnes & Thornburg, 100 North Michigan Street, South Bend. I'm also the volunteer president of the Board of Trustees of the Northern Indiana Historical Society, doing business as the History Museum. The museum appeals the denial by the South Bend Historic Preservation Commission of the museum's certificate of appropriateness to relocate the Navarre cabin from its current location at the Leaper Park East facility to the museum campus. We respectfully disagree with the HPC decision and contend that that decision was not supported by the facts and applicable law. And for the following reasons, together with those that we articulated in our brief in support of our position, respectfully request that the Common Council reverse the decision of the HPC and approve the museum's petition. In connection with our position statement this evening, we have a couple of illustrative slides we'd like to share with the group. Hopefully that's okay procedurally, Mr. Palmer.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So as you can see, as you know, our petition involves the historic Navarre cabin. The cabin's history is long. In 1895, the museum acquired the cabin, where we rescued it from imminent destruction from its original location, which is spot number 1 on the attached slide. And it's been moved multiple times in the 125 years since. It was first moved across the river to Leaper Park East in 1904. It was moved again in 1916, and then moved to its current location, number 4 on the slide, in 1954. Its Leaper Park location continues to pose great difficulties in interpreting the cabin to school students, community residents, and tourists, and it's only able to be used on a couple of days each year. To successfully tell the cabin story, it must be moved. The proposed move would place the cabin directly west of the History Museum's main building, beside the historic Oliver Gardens. The initiative would provide immersive experience with historically accurate buildings and Native American structures, informative staff, and interpretive signage. This relocation is an inviting way for the museum's annual 45,000 school students, community residents, and other tourists that visit the Navarre cabin to learn about the times of the area's first pioneer settler, Pierre Navarre. Benefits of the relocation, which we do not believe the HBC gave sufficient weight to, include the following. First, caretaking. Caretaking of this historic cabin will be far superior on the museum site, where it can be monitored regularly by staff for arson, break-ins, storm damage, and other types of harm, all of which occurred to structures at its Leaper Park East location. The second is programming. Programming can be widely expanded and take place daily if moved from its current location, where distance from the museum and restrictions from the South Bend Parks and HPC severely limit the number and the types of activities that can be offered. Third is safety. The safety of school students will be greatly enhanced with the move to the museum site, which has accessible restrooms, and Leaper Park East has none, and is far away from the risk of its current location, which include a major roadway and the St. Joseph River, which are risks to children. Fourth is accessibility. Tens of thousands of people visit the History Museum annually, and they can easily include a visit to the Navarre cabin on its new site. Due to the limited field trips accessible to most schools, one bus ride to the museum encompasses only a visit to one location. Whereas if they come to the History Museum now, they could see the History Museum itself, the Oliver Mansion, Navarre Cabin, and the Studebaker National Museum. A field trip to Leaper Park East almost always precludes a second trip to the museum, with the logistics being very impossible for most schools. And finally, precedence. In its 200 years, the Navarre Cabin, now in its fourth location, was moved previous times for other projects' convenience. The proposed move now would be the first time it was moved to provide a better space for the cabin, as well as a more sensible place for related programming. So in conclusion, we believe that the benefits to the community make the relocation of our Navarre Cabin an extremely worthwhile endeavor. And the cities of South Bend's Venues, Parks, and Arts Department, the South Bend School Superintendent Todd Cummings, the PHM School Superintendent Jerry Thacker, and others all agree that having submitted favorable recommendations, copies of which were included in our brief and are included also in the record. So tonight, the museum respectfully requests that the Common Council reverse the HPC's denial of the petition, finding it arbitrary, capricious, and unsupported by substantial evidence, and allow the museum to effectively utilize its Navarre Cabin in the community's best interest. So thank you for your time and consideration. We yield the balance of our time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, then, we'll move to HPC, and they will have 20 minutes for their presentation. We do ask you to state your name and your address, please.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sandra Kennedy. I'm an assistant city attorney with an office on the 12th floor of the county city building. I represent the Historic Preservation Commission. I will be asking also toward the end of my presentation for a Historic Preservation Administrator Alicia Fiesel to say a few words about how standards and guidelines are developed, as well as the Historic Preservation President Michelle Gelfman to say a few words about how the Historic Preservation Commissioners make their determinations. As you know, the purpose of an appeal to the Common Council is not to hear evidence and make a determination on the merits of the original petition. Rather, Council is asked to review the methods used by the Historic Preservation Commission in making its decision. In this case, the petitioner claims that the Historic Preservation Commission's methods and decision is flawed because they were arbitrary and capricious, an abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with applicable law, or that it's unsupported by substantial evidence. The Historic Preservation Commission disagrees and asks that the Council uphold its denial of Certificate of Appropriateness application number 2020-0302 regarding the removal of the Navarre Cabin from Leaper Park. The Navarre Cabin has been a part of Leaper Park since 1904 for 116 years, and in its current location since 1954 for 66 years. Leaper Park and the structures located within it is a local historic landmark designated in 1996 by the Common Council of the City of South Bend. The documentation supporting the park's landmark status includes specific references to the in 2000, the park was listed on the National Registry of Historic Places by the National Park Service. To obtain this listing, the city worked with the State Department of Natural Resources. The petitioner benefited from this listing through the grant it used to assist with the rehabilitation of the cabin. Petitions, including staff reports, are circulated to the petitioner and the commissioners prior to any HPC meeting. The HPC heard the petition to relocate the cabin at its June meeting. The ordinary course in which each Historic Preservation Commission meeting is held includes an announcement of the petition, the staff report summary of the petition, including past certificates of appropriateness that were issued and denied, and staff's recommendation. Petitioner's presentation comes next, including clarification of staff's information, if any, the commission questions to the petitioner, and then commissioner discussion. Public input is heard after commission discussion, and then the commission makes its decision. This procedure is reflected in the minutes of the June meeting. The petitioner was not subject to a time limitation in presenting its position, and all members of the public were invited to speak for or against the petition. Additionally, staff read into the minutes all of the letters it received from the public in favor and in opposition to the petition. The Commission's internal discussion regarding the petition before public input allows the public to argue or clarify points that the Commission is discussing. In fact, it is clear that the commissioners took into account letters opposing the move from residents in the historic neighborhoods near Leaper Park, their former colleague and architectural historian for the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as a pillar of the community whose ancestral home was the target of arson on a Halloween night in 1980. In fact, the commission heard issues regarding the safety of the cabin, including the arson that destroyed the Pharaoh Powell house. Mr. Bryant, a descendant of Pharaoh Powell, wrote on behalf of the Powell family to oppose the move of the cabin. Teachers came to the meeting to speak in favor of the move, but did not provide specific references to any instances where the safety of the children were at issue. They merely stated a generalized concern regarding the river and the inconvenience of the lack of restrooms of Leaper Park. The History Museum also failed to provide any specific instances of harm to the cabin. The commissioners themselves, having, as a condition of their appointment, to be interested in historic preservation, understand the significance of the Navarre cabin to this area. The commissioners also considered the standards and guidelines in place for Leaper Park. These standards and guidelines were established by HPC in accordance with the city's preservation ordinance. That is, once a landmark is created by the Common Council, HPC is mandated by council in the ordinance to set forth the standards and guidelines for preserving the landmark. Leaper Park's standards and guidelines state that the Navarre cabin shall be preserved. It is an unequivocal statement. Additionally, the standards and guidelines require that the overall landscape of the park, including the spatial and visual relationships between structures and specific architectural elements, as well as the landscape, must be preserved. That means that the cabin in its place should be preserved for the future generations of the city to come and enjoy the cabin in its natural landscape. The commissioners are required to make determinations based upon the standards and guidelines as written. They are not allowed to make determinations that oppose these standards and guidelines. Therefore, the commissioners correctly denied the petitioner's application to move the Navarre cabin because it is out of line with the established standards and guidelines. An approval of the move of the cabin would have been arbitrary and capricious and against substantial evidence. I'm now turning the floor over to Alicia Fiesel for a little bit more information on the standards and guidelines. Alicia?
Good evening, council members. Can everybody hear me? Am I here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Alicia Fiesel, Historic Preservation Administrator for the City of South Bend. I have an office in community investment on the 14th floor of the County City Building. Historic landmarks are made on the basis of historical and cultural significance or educational value and suitability for preservation. Any or all of those three things. There are nearly 1,000 historic landmarks that have been designated since 1973 in South Bend, and that includes St. Joseph County unincorporated areas as well, that number. Leaper Park is the City of South Bend's only historic landscape landmark, and it's actually a spectacular example of the mission of HPC to preserve and protect our special places so that we may all enjoy them now and long into the future. For this and all other historic landmarks, reasonable and just standards and guidelines have been established and are used by the Commission when making decisions on architectural treatment, site development, and provisions including construction, reconstruction, alterations, demolition, or removal of any building or structure or parts thereof. As an aside, the Leaper standards and all other standards governing historic landmarks in historic districts are currently under study to be updated. In the coming months, all standards for historic properties will be revised through a public process and will be presented before this council for input. Leaper Park was established as a historic landmark in 1996, and since that time, changes to the site have been governed by the Commission using the standards and criteria made specifically for the preservation of Leaper Park. In 2000, Leaper Park was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Administered by the National Park Service, the National Register is the United States list of places worthy of preservation. Having existed in Leaper Park since 1904, the Navarre cabin is a contributing resource of the park. And because of its status within Leaper Park, the Navarre cabin was awarded nearly $50,000 in 2005 for its restoration by the National Park Service. A covenant held by the National Park Service to preserve the cabin in Leaper Park expired in 2015, Otherwise, this move would likely have been disallowed by the National Park Service along with HPC. If the cabin is relocated outside of Leaper Park, the oldest structure in South Bend would no longer fall under the purview of the commission and would be unprotected from alterations and even from demolition. Also, if the Navarre cabin is relocated outside of Leaper Park, its designation in the National Register of Historic Places will be removed and it will no longer be eligible for National Park Service funding. I respectfully ask that you vote to uphold the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission, and you will now hear from Michelle Gelfman, who's the president of the Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Jones, how much time do we have left in the 20-minute presentation?
We have 10 minutes and 52 seconds.
Okay, great.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michelle Gelfman, and I reside at 619 Riverside Drive in South Bend, Indiana, 46601. I'm the president of the Historic Preservation Commission. It is my responsibility to guide the commission in the establishment of Section 21-12.04B7, which is reasonable and just standards for the preservation of historic landmarks. Our commission listens, evaluates all information given to us by the petitioners, the public, letters and emails which we have received for and against this petition. Equal weight has been given to all submissions. It is clear that due to a 4-2 vote to deny the removal of the cabin, this decision was not made arbitrarily or capriciously. We considered all aspects that were brought before us before the vote. The commission also took into account the staff recommendations, the standards, and the guidelines for the Leaper Park and the cabin itself. The Historic Preservation Commission meeting on June 15, 2020, regarding the move of the Navarre cabin, included thoughtfully asked questions by the commissioners to the petitioners themselves prior to the vote. The cabin has been part of Leaper Park since 1904, yes, though in various locations on the river, we all are aware of that. But it is highly considered in the context of the entire park. Commissioners Stahlheim, Ponder, Deegan, and Gelfman voted to deny the petition to move the cabin for the following reasons. Number one, it went against the standards and guidelines stating that all items shall be preserved. Number two, it betrays the educational mission and historic value of the location. Number three, it more proposed future funding for maintenance as a way of making up for a loss of historic tax credit resources if they cannot be obtained. 4, due to the national historic location. And number 5, and this one is critical, Ordinance number 9.7.1.1, items shall be preserved for this particular site, and that moving or demolishing any historic structure that would alter the spatial or visual relationships in the landscape shall not be allowed. A primary factor in the preservation of the Navarre cabin, where it stands, is the federal funding. Due to its status as an included asset within the National Register listed as Leaper Park as a whole. The cabin is part of the River Bend historic neighborhood. As such, the neighborhood prides itself on the rich history and historic homes that surround the historic park. The history of the cabin is part of our neighborhood and the community. The roots of this cabin run deep. It is a valuable piece of South Bend's civic and social history. Historic structures should be valued in context, not alone. There are just a few comments that the community members have sent to us in response to this petition, which I have just read to you. I urge you to uphold the Historic Preservation Commission's denial of the History Museum's petition to move our beloved cabin. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Attorney Kennedy, is that the end of your presentation?
I'd just like to have one more minute just to conclude. I'd like to thank you for your attention. The Historic Preservation again asks you that you uphold its denial of the petitioner's application for a certificate of appropriateness number 2020-0302 because the commissioners in denying the application were complying with the established standards and guidelines for Leaper Park. The standards and guidelines govern the decisions the HPC can make. Overturning HPC's decision would establish a dangerous precedent where any decision the Historic Preservation Commission makes, regardless of whether or not it's supported by the standards and guidelines, will be appealed to Common Council. Thank you.
Thank you as well. We'll now move back to the rebuttal from the Northern Indiana Historical Society.
Thank you, President White. And again, we respectfully disagree with the assessment of HPC and argue that the petition was in fact founded and should have been approved. Denial was arbitrary, capricious, and unsupported by the substantial evidence. And the Deputy Executive Director, Christy Erickson, will speak for a few moments about the specifics of the standards and criteria for Leaper Park and the historical context and how they relate to the cabin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of mention was made of...
State your name and address for the record, please.
Christy Erickson, my address is 3806-2B Appaloosa Lane, South Bend, 46628. We are, of course, aware of the standards and guidelines for Leaper Park. When we applied for our certificate of appropriateness, that is, of course, to ask the HPC to consider the best interest of the public to kind of go against those standards. As we know from their own ethics policy, at the end of the day, it is important for them to consider what is in the best interest of the public. And a good example of that is the duck pond in Leaper Park West, when that was approved because it was considered something that was better for the city to install the fountain there versus the duck pond. Some mention was made of the historic landmark and National Register status of the cabin by virtue of being in Leaper Park. Of course, the cabin is mentioned in those resolutions and in the National Register application, as it is the oldest structure in South Bend. So you'd want to mention that, but both of those are hinged on Leaper Park being designed by architect George Kessler, who was a big name in the City Beautiful movement, which, if you're familiar with that, had to do with classical architecture and not so much log cabins. And if you actually look at George Kessler's design for Leaper Park, the cabin is nowhere to be found, even though it was already in the park at the time that he made that design. So its significance as being part of that design doesn't even include the cabin. So it is clear to us that it's not a significant part of that design that Mr. Kessler had, that those statuses are conferred upon the park by virtue of being designed by him. There was some mention of arson of the Powell House on Halloween night, which is a great example of why we do want to move the cabin. Something that we are always concerned about is arson of the cabin. It's merely yards from the Powell House. So since we can't keep an eye on it in the evenings, that's clearly a concern for us, as well as fundraising. The grant from the DNR that Ms. Fiesel mentioned, I just want to let you know that that was only 28% of the entire cost of that project, and it was the only time in the over 100 years that we've owned the cabin that we've relied on money from the federal government. So we are fully capable of funding upkeep, maintenance, restoration of the cabin on our own, though we do intend to still consult the Historic Preservation Commission, reapply for historic landmark status, make sure they're still a part of the maintenance and upkeep of the cabin in its current site in a proper context with outbuildings and where we're able to use it much more properly than we can now. Jim.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And for these reasons, again, the museum respectfully requests that the Common Council reverse HPC's denial, and we appreciate your thoughtful consideration. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Northern Indiana Historical Society as well as the South Bend Historical Preservation Commission for your presentation. We'll now at the council level, according to the guidelines, council members, we have 15 minutes for discussions or to ask questions, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Palmer.
That's correct.
Okay. So council members, any questions that you may have? We have 15 minutes total amongst the 8 members. Any council members? Councilwoman Sharon McBride, followed by Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan and Councilman Kenneth Lee. Councilwoman Sharon McBride.
Thank you, and thank you both for the presentation. I want to make sure that I heard, who is Mr. Kessler? He's an architect? Is that what I heard?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay, so he was one of the architects, but Mr. Powell actually was one of the legendary people that lived in that area, or one of the first. I guess I'm trying to decipher when you said that his drawings wasn't in the cabin wasn't in his drawings of an architect and not of a.
That was George Kessler. He's a landscape architect who did the design for Leaper Park that is considered the basis for its design today.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to figure out what was the rationale for his, for me to weigh whether that drawing was weighted anything or not, in my opinion. And secondly, the arson happened in 1980, and that was the last time that something happened. So I really don't think that it'd be too much of a trouble or worried about security, because it's been a long time. I mean, I understand back then when the arson took place, but if we haven't really had any major or significant issues.
That was the last time something that serious happened. We constantly have to deal with graffiti, vandalism, broken windows. We had to install shutters in order to prevent the windows from being broken. People sleeping underneath the cabin, things like that. Mostly minor, fortunately, but.
Thank you for that. And how much would it cost to move the cabin?
Approximately $25,000.
Okay, and you said something about it not losing its registry if it moved?
Though it would lose its status on the registry if it's moved, we intend to reapply for both National Register status and local landmark status.
Okay, thank you. I'll yield at this time.
Okay, council members, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Councilwoman Morgan, followed by Councilman Kenneth Lee, and then Councilwoman Sheila Niskoski. Our 15 minutes will conclude, if I'm not mistaken, at 9:26. Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan.
She muted.
I don't see her. I did see her hand. I'll go to Councilman Kenneth Lee and circle back to Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan.
How many people visit the cabin now, and what is the potential of more people visiting and being educated on its history?
That's a great question. Right now, we get between 500 to 1,000 people visiting it annually, mostly school children during our Cabin Days program. We have it open a few days a year, since we have to basically set up everything, unload everything, and we can't leave anything in the park or have any structures where we can store things it makes it very difficult to have programming out there at this time. On its new site, we currently have approximately 45,000 visitors at the museum, who each of which would be able to visit. It would be open daily for people to enjoy. We would have interpreters there regularly, maybe not every day to start, but certainly on the weekends for schools by request. And we also are open for free for St. Joseph County residents if they use a library pass through the library. So it would be also able to be seen free of charge by anybody in the county.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan.
Yes, I apologize.
No problem.
My computer froze. So unfortunate. Sorry about that. So I'm going to apologize in advance if this question was already asked. But I too had a question about the standards and that they currently include the duck pond. And so can someone explain to me the decision of the duck pond and when that was removed, why this ordinance wasn't updated at that after that, or
I can speak to the duck pond. As president of the HPC Commission, I can speak to that. The reason that it was voted on to remove the duck pond at the time was because of problems with the waterfowl. There were waterfowl that were diseased and ill. There were waterfowl that had to be put down because of it. They were being fed the wrong food diet by people throwing bread into that area. They were not being able to feed on their own in the habitat that they were used to. And we had ornithologists that complied with, or I should say that they agreed with our assessment of the problem with the fowl themselves. And not only that, the pond was full of bacteria and had not been regularly taken care of properly, thus getting the fowl very sick in a lot of cases.
I'd like to point out also that the Kessler design was from 1915, so that's really got nothing to do with today. In today's design, I believe the cabin is prevalent. And also, one of the reasons why there was a loophole for the removal of the duck pond, because water features were allowed to be removed if there was a safety concern or a health concern. So those were the reasons why the Historic Preservation Commission was able to remove or vote to remove the duck pond.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will now go to Councilwoman Sheila Noskowski and follow up with Councilman Troy Warner.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone, for your presentations tonight. I just had a couple questions that I want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. First of all, the ordinance that we're all talking about, that all items shall be preserved. That is an ordinance into which you are basing part of the reason, is what I'm understanding, HPC. Now, if that was to be allowed to be relocated and they lose that historic preservation status, how long would it take to get it back? And would they have to go through HPC to get it recertified for that status with the National Historic Preservation status, if I'm saying that correctly? I guess that's my question, is if it's to be removed, then what is the process for getting it back, since it sounds like we already took the steps to get it where it's at now? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Elisha Fiesel, Administrator for Historic Preservation. I actually read a letter of opposition into record during the HPC meeting that was written by Paul Diebold, he's the Assistant Director of Preservation Services for the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. And he did state that relocation of the cabin would essentially remove it from the National Register, making it ineligible for grants from our office, as well as leaving the cabin potentially unprotected from any review process involving our office. Should the cabin be moved to a location within the National Register listed historic district, our office would consider it a non-contributing building to that district. Again, in this instance, owners of the cabin would be ineligible for our matching grants or other programs. So with that statement, I feel like the chance of having this relisted in the National Register is very low. And having worked with that office for 10 years, as we are a certified local government, I'm confident in what he's saying is applicable in this case. To become a local historic landmark, there's a process that goes through the Historic Preservation Commission and ultimately lands with the Common Council to make the final decision. So there's a more compelling case that could be made for its local landmark status, which would then put the protections over the changes and alterations and its future. Two different things, but one, the local is more probable of happening in its new location than the National Register, which would make it eligible for funding.
So we had asked for that oversight, though when we spoke with Mr. Diebold in Indianapolis, he told us it was about a 50-50 chance on the National Register status.
Thank you. Well, now the Council Member Troy Warner, and I think I see Council Member Kenneth Lee hand at 9:26. We'll end our 15-minute time allotment. Councilman Troy Warner.
Yes, this would be, I guess, for a question for the city. I'm kind of struggling with, given that we redid the whole West End, and even in the minutes it refers to the redo of the West End, and one of the commissioners wishing for a cabin ferry like the Fountain Ferry. I guess I don't understand how this isn't an arbitrary decision made upon what happened on the West End. You keep referring to 7.11, and 7.11 lists that all furnishings, all objects shouldn't be removed. But we totally redid the whole East End. We removed all the benches, we removed the duck pond. But now we get over here, and now we're not moving anything at all. I guess I'm struggling with why that was made on the one end, but not on this end.
The new park's design called for new benches. It called for a new vista. It called for the removal of the duck pond to save the waterfowl, to protect people from disease. It didn't call for the destruction of the cabin. The cabin was to be left alone. So when you're saying that things were removed, I mean, specifically, some of those benches were dilapidated. I mean, some of the garbage cans couldn't be removed. So these were replaced with reproductions of those benches and garbage cans and the like. So one of the suggestions that somebody made during the meeting was whether or not a reproduction could be put at the History Museum. That was not determined to be something, I guess, the History Museum's interested in doing. But there was some discussion about all of that. But the design of the new Leaper Park was to replace with exact replicas or better replicas, things like furniture and garbage cans and streetlights. And replace the fountain.
Okay. Councilmember Warner, do you have another question?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
If not, I'll move to, I see one more hand up, Councilmember Kenneth Lee, and you have 2 minutes because then our 15-minute time will be ended.
Okay, I just want to echo what Troy Warner said, Councilman Warner said, or just trying to understand if the cabin is moved, or not moved, the effect that it will have on visitors, because I think the most important thing is that people get the history of South Bend. So it being replicated and put at the History Museum, is that an option?
So from our perspective, the cabin was saved originally by the Historical Society as an educational tool, as a way for us to help people learn about Pierre Navarre and his time and his life and people of the time. And if it's left dark in Leaper Park and we build a replica and we don't use the original one anymore, we really feel like we're not using it to its full potential and not fulfilling its mission as an educational piece. And that's why it was moved the first time, was, to do that. So we would, of course, in talking with the Parks Department, who supports this move, with the school systems, both South Bend and Penn, who support the move as well, to help the children be able to see it too, we would memorialize the cabin and its journey at that site. We talked about a marker, some benches, things like that, so that people who come can learn about the life of the cabin and then actually come to the museum and be kind of more immersed in that context than you can now with the pumping station and the highway and the hospital and the reservoir in the background. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. It's now 9:26. This ends the discussion at the council level. I'm going to go back to Attorney Bob Palmer, if he could again outline the next steps in terms of action or actions that the council can take moving forward.
The chair should entertain a motion to either uphold or to reverse the decision of the HPC. Whichever motion is made and seconded will be voted on. It will take a majority of the entire council to reverse the decision of the Historical Preservation Commission.
Okay. Attorney Palmer, what happens if there's not a majority?
If there's not a majority to reverse, then the decision of the HPC stands.
Okay. Council members, do you have any questions in regards to the action as well as the motion that is before us at this particular time? Pastor Lee?
Yes, I want to make sure I'm clear on upholding and reversing. So if Attorney Palmer can make clear to us, upholding means this and reversal means this. So I'm clear on what it means.
Upholding the HPC decision would mean that the cabin remains in Leaper Park. Reversing means it would be moved to the historical museum property.
Okay. I noticed that, excuse me, Councilman Troy Warner, you have your hand up in regards to a question.
Thank you, President White. Attorney Palmer, I just want to make clear, and this is probably more for the public than anybody else, but we received some emails from the public requesting us to vote one way or vote the other way, and our decision is based solely upon the record, the documents in our packet, and the arguments of the attorney tonight, correct?
That's correct.
That's absolutely correct. Any outside evidence that was not presented to the Historical Preservation Commission at their hearing cannot be considered.
Any other questions?
And then lastly, can you list the factors for us, please?
Sure. The HPC decision should be upheld unless the council decides that that decision was arbitrary, capricious, an abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with applicable law, contrary to constitutional right, power, privilege, or immunity, in excess of statutory jurisdiction, authority, limitations, or statutory rights, without observance of procedures required by applicable law and ordinance, or unsupported by substantial evidence.
Council members, do you have any
I
other questions?
I
Council
have
members,
one last question. Attorney Palmer, do we have to provide any explanation with our vote with this, or just a vote?
You do not need to provide an explanation. All you need to do is vote. But if you would like, if any council member would like to provide an explanation, it's permissible.
Thank you, sir.
Attorney Palmer, is that explanation given after or before the vote?
It can be given before the motion and the vote.
Okay.
All right.
So council members, I will now like to entertain a motion. And before we vote, I would ask if council members would like to share their sentiments in regards to explanation in regards to their vote. The motion, the second, will start the discussion.
President White, I would like to make a motion to uphold the vote of the HBC.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. Prior to taking a vote on the motion and the second, council members, do you want to make any statements regarding your vote, or at this time, if you were to vote on this motion, knowing that it's going to take a majority?
President White, I just have a point of order and another clarification. The motion was made to uphold the vote. So a yay vote upholds the vote, a nay vote does not.
That's correct. The motion was to uphold the HPC decision or recommendation, yes. And it was made by Councilwoman McBride. And if I'm not mistaken, it was seconded by Councilwoman Sheila Muskowski. Council members, any comments prior to the call for the vote? Councilmember Kenneth Lee.
I just want to say this is a very tough decision. Do we keep the cabin where it needs to be at or where it's been at? Or do we move it so that it can be exposed to more people? That's a very tough decision. So I'm trying to weigh out the options.
Okay. Any other council members? Councilmember Sheila Muskowski.
Yes, it is a tough decision to be able to open that up more to the public, and I've seen both sides, but I also heard that Mr. Powell, one of the descendants, I believe, does not want the cabin moved, which not that is taken into the consideration, but it is somewhat moving. And what was set before us in the terminology that Mr. Palmer presented to us, I see that the HPC is abiding by the rules that were set before them. I would love to see that move to that campus. I think that it would be wonderful to have more engagement with our youngsters, our school kids. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at what it was set before us, I just can't get by the fact that we're looking at ordinances, we're looking at how it got to be on the National Registry, and how this council at one point helped that action happen. So that is, it is a tough decision, but when you look at it at the end of the day, this council at some point made that decision.
And I would like to clarify that the motion was made by Councilwoman Sharon McBride, and if I'm not mistaken, it was seconded by Councilwoman Lori Hammond. Councilmember Jay Tuska.
Thank you, President White. I would just, echo, I guess, what Councilmember Nitsgotsky was saying. From a programmatic standpoint and educating the public, I think that this cabin would be great on the History Museum's campus. And so, had I been in on that original decision, maybe I would have, voted in that way. But what's before us is to decide whether or not this was arbitrary, capricious, et cetera, and I'm just not seeing it that way. And so, again, it's a tough choice because, again, I would love to see that cabin moved, but that's not the question before us.
Thank you. Any other council members? Seeing none, Clerk Jones, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Tomas Morgan?
Nay.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
Councilmember McBride?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner?
Nay.
Councilmember Teshka?
Aye.
Councilmember Niskoski?
Aye.
President White?
Aye.
6 ayes.
I will go to Attorney Palmer. The vote stands at 6-2, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. The decision of the HPC is affirmed, and the cabin will remain where it is.
I think everyone said that this was a tough decision. I know we're going to be looking at our ordinance as we move forward. I've heard someone have indicated that we can expect some recommendations coming from the HPC, as well as looking at other things as it pertains to not only the historic preservation, but other items that I know that we need to review as well. So I thank everyone for your thoughtfulness, your questions, your involvement. Again, we were pretty much kind of limited into the areas that we could actually look at. But again, no one is saying that this was an easy decision, because it was not. And so I'll now move to any new business from council members. If there's no new business, City Clerk Jones, is there anyone waiting under privilege of the floor?
No one is waiting under privilege of the floor at this time.
I do see one hand up, Jesse Davis.
Okay, that's in a different section.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Jesse Davis has his hand up, and so does Jerry and Jordan. I don't have their last name.
Mm-hmm. Are there wishing to speak on any agenda items that we did not discuss?
Mr. Davis, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but if you want to speak on something that has not already been discussed, please state your name and your address. You have 3 minutes.
Jesse Davis, P.O. Box 10205, South Bend, Indiana. A couple of the council members that are still on the council now have heard me ask questions about this in the past years. Today I was coming back from Elkhart County, and I observed one of our South Bend traffic and lighting employees in a traffic and lighting truck from South Bend working on the traffic lights on the Elkhart County side of County Line Road, and I guess it would be considered 933 or Lincoln Way. And I had raised this question in the past that if this employee is being paid by the city of South Bend and driving South Bend equipment, and he's on the clock with the city of South Bend, how can we be having those people working in other counties and other cities? And I was told at that point that I had questions seeing them in Mishawaka. And I was told that there was a contract with Mishawaka to have these South Bend lighting guys work on the traffic lights in Mishawaka. Now I see them in Elkhart. And I did a lot of research on this issue. And if they're on the time clock being paid by South Bend, and we're also contracting them out to another city to work while they're on the clock, that's ghost employment. And that violates federal law. So I would really like you guys to look into that and clarify, how we can pay our employees and they can use our equipment that our tax dollars are paying for in other cities and now, in fact, in other counties. Since you're not in person, I couldn't provide you photos, but I do have photos of the truck, which I believe was truck 423. And that was this afternoon, I'm going to say probably about 1:30 or 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, and we'll forward that question on to, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Eric Hovard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you as well. Clerk Jones, is there anyone else waiting on the privilege of the floor?
Jerry and Jordan have their hand up.
Can you have them state your name and address, please?
Hi, my name is Jerry Casey, and I live at 421 Manitou Place in South Bend. I'm a professor at IUSB in the Department of Labor Studies, and I'm also working with the Michiana Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And so we're here to speak about the ordinance that's under discussion to create a community police review board.
I don't know, excuse me, because we had first reading, it was on the agenda. I don't know if you could speak to that at this time. I would yield to our attorney. There will be ample time to do so, but I want to make sure that we're following the guidelines. Attorney Palmer, since it was on the agenda, the privilege of floor is only for agenda items, only items that was not on the agenda.
That's correct, President White. It is on the agenda and it will be open for public hearing after the second reading.
So, of course, we would welcome your input, Dr. Jerry, and we definitely you will have ample opportunity to do so. The substitute bill is online, and we welcome your input as well.
Thank you very much. And we know that the council has been very, very diligent in doing the research on this. So we feel like you're moving ahead in great ways.
We thank you as well. Clerk Jones, is there anyone else?
Yeah, this is
okay.
Yeah, I'm checking right now.
I wanted to go next.
Hello?
Yes. Please state your name and your address.
Yeah, Jordan Geiger, 302 South Falcon Street, South Bend, Indiana. I had a question about how do you put in complaints on council members? I know I had emailed you all about that, but do I have to go directly to the city clerk's office, or is that something that I can get online?
Yeah. Mr. Jordan, if I'm not mistaken, I thought that our attorney had sent you information. If not, I would make sure that he will send you information first thing tomorrow morning on how to do that.
Okay, cool. Because it wasn't really exactly clear to me unless I missed an email.
No problem. He will send you that information.
Okay, and then one other thing I wanted to bring up, in a conversation that I had with Ruskowski via text, Scott Ruskowski, he had said that back in 2013, that he had, or the department, I shouldn't say he, but the department, FOP, I don't know, had proposed that they would send out counselors or clinicians of some kind with police officers to certain crime scenes. And I don't know if the police budget is available for review yet, like a detailed budget, but I'm hoping that the council will take that up as a real budget item something that could be funded. I know last year there was some dollars set aside for like, I don't know the exact term, but like medical professionals going out with the police.
Yeah, that was with the fire department.
Oh, that was okay.
It's the fire, and the police budget is online, and I'm quite sure, we would forward, suggestions on to our chief of police. So we thank you for those comments as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council members, city clerk, is there anyone else waiting under privilege of the floor?
No one else is waiting on the privilege of the floor.
If there's no other information we'd like to share with the council, our next budget hearing will be this Wednesday from 5 to 7. You should receive the information from Dan Parker, and get plenty of rest. And I thank you for your time and your attention that you've given to this council meeting, and look forward to our upcoming meetings as well. No other business. We stand adjourned. Good night, and stay healthy and safe.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, President White.
Mm-hmm.
Good night.
Thanks, President White.
Good night.